Call the Wednesday, February 28th Planning Board meeting to order. For the record, we're being televised and videotaped by Chelmsford Telemedia. If anyone in the audience or anyone else recording this meeting, please step forward and state your name for the record. First item on the agenda is Chris Woodward and Nick Parley are here from the Recycling Committee, and they want to address the board. So please step to the podium, state your name, and
Me up there with you?
Sure. I'm Chris Woodward from the Recycling Committee.
Nick Parley, Chelmsford DPW.
could you spell that? No.
Can you stand that up so it hears both of you? There you go. Somebody short was there.
Nick is our Mr. Know-It-All on our committee, so he really has a great depth of knowledge, and so is here to support us. But as a committee, we've discussed for a long time the problem of the potential problem that there's not sufficient room for recycling dumpsters or totes in multi-unit dwellings or commercial units. And this has especially become apparent when now, or a potential problem now that I'm understanding that there's requiring fencing around trash areas on properties. So if there's going to be fencing, that all the more important to make room for the recycling, because it becomes an expense to have to reconfigure your fencing or tear it down and rebuild it. And but most thing, we're just here to get your advice on how we can ensure that there's, sufficient plans in place for developers to provide space for recycling.
So we're looking for consideration on new projects that there is space allowed for recycling. We're not asking you to make them recycle, that there is sufficient space to recycle if they choose to, which is state law, but no one enforces it.
Funny how that works.
That seems easy.
I think it's a good move. I think one way to help do that is engineering reviews all the plans.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll send Christina, or talk to Christina at some point.
What about Board of Health too? Because they do require the fencing. They may
Oh.
not require it for recycling.
They do.
Oh, they do? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too, is work with Board of Health, because they comment on all of our site plans that come before us. So they always comment to put the fence around the dumpster. Maybe they can include a note to make sure that they don't see recycling, they do see recycling, and maybe coordinate that with you, send the note over to you as well.
Christina would probably be the point person on that.
Yeah, so I think that's the
She's
best.
the one that can read plans.
So,
Just out of curiosity, and I know it can vary in accordance to how big the development is, but how much space?
So if the town is not picking it up, I don't think we have a say on how big it should be, personally. Whether they want to do, 2 rolling barrels or a whole dumpster.
Can you offer any sort of guidance?
So like a dumpster is kind of 8 by 8. I say, 12 by 12 would be the ideal. You never get the ideal for the enclosure, so it's always, 11 by 10. For the rolling totes, I believe technically they don't need to be fenced in yet, but I think that's only a matter of time before codes change that they do. So, a rolling tote has a footprint of 2 feet by 2 feet, so just some additional space off the trash dumpster enclosure.
Great.
Yeah.
So for instance, like a residential, what's the limit for trash and for recycling? It's the same size, right?
What do
For
you,
single unit,
for single unit?
you can have up to
two 32s.
Yeah, 232s
And
or
unlimited.
unlimited recycling, but
unlimited.
I don't think it would be appropriate to put any sort of limit on the commercial and industrial's trash.
Yeah, okay, I was just trying to give just an example on. but
I think the other question is too, sometimes if you end up with the recycling behind the trash, the recycling guy gets upset that he's gonna move the trash guy's stuff out of the way. Is that get to be a problem, or?
So it depends on the style of collection. A lot of companies offer bundled, so you might have waste management come pick up the trash and a separate truck picks up the recycling. But, you know, they're hired to do a job, and if they go into it knowing it, they should build that price in if they have to get out and move stuff around.
I we
Is-
can certainly recommend this.
Yeah, I think we should do that, and
Make it a policy to comment.
that project should try to make an effort to include recycling in their dumpster or trash area.
We can treat that kind of like we do with the lighting, say, it's not our bylaw, but this is what we like.
Yeah, yeah.
So is there a need to change any law? I mean, is there measurements for how big a space can be on a certain size property or anything like that, or?
How many families you gonna have on that property? That's part of what governs it. 168 unit complex is different than a 10-unit complex.
But I don't think there's anything in the bylaw that
There's nothing in the
specifies.
bylaw that will say that you have to have a 5 cubic yard dumpster or a 10 cubic yard dumpster. There's nothing in the bylaw that states that.
Because you might have a business that generates very little trash,
Right,
so.
yeah, I know the company I work for, I think we get a pickup every other week.
Yep.
You know, which is, we don't generate a lot of trash. But we also have a cardboard dumpster, so we separate cardboard and paper versus trash. So
How often is that picked up?
that's picked up, I think, once a week.
Yeah, you would have a lot of boxes So and if you stuff. would, if you have the cardboard dumpster and the regular dumpster, now you'd have to put them side by side in a fenced-in,
Yeah, it does take up more
Right.
square foot area.
Yeah, but-
It's funny, the cardboard dumpster is twice the size of the trash dumpster.
so I don't think
That's
we
the way
can
it oughta
make
be.
a size recommendation, just make
an
it,
area, yeah.
make it be known that
Yeah, I think long as we
you're
make,
gonna have to make it twice the size so you can fit
Yeah.
a recycling dumpster in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not even necessarily saying that it needs to be double the size. You know, if they wanted to, say you had a dumpster and you have a couple totes to
Right.
go alongside the dumpster.
Okay.
All right,
Because I know that parking is a consideration. You know, there are a number of small lots that get developed
Yep.
that, you know, every space counts. But, you know, this is also worth considering.
Tim, you got a question?
Well, do they have to be fenced in, the recycled bins?
Questionable. Recycling dumpsters do. Recycling bins kind of fall into a gray area.
Yeah, we should probably assume though that they
I
should
would
be
assume that
enclosed.
they should be
They should
enclosed,
be.
you know, with the dumpster. And it's aesthetically, more aesthetically pleasing with the
Yeah,
fenced in
good
area.
point.
So,
and I find usually if you make a suggestion, they just run with it. you
Yeah,
know.
you know, ask them to add 3 feet on for recycling area, you know, to a 10 by 10. So make it 13
Yeah.
by 10, you know, you give them a.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, we
you
can
know,
do
we
that.
can give up, you know, because most all projects come before us for landscaping special permits, if, you know, and we're giving up something in landscaping, maybe we give up a little bit more to get that recycling area, so.
And our goal is to try and get more and more recycling, so
Should be
we'll
the
get
goal of
to
everybody.
recycling bins and trash totes, how's that? Whatever.
I think it's much cheaper too, I don't know, I think
The
it's cheaper to
the
pull.
market's a little screwy nowadays. Now's not the best time to look at recycling price-wise.
No, but I'm saying for a
For the
company to
town.
throw cardboard and trash into one dumpster,
Yeah.
they're paying one fee. You know, if the cardboard fee is here and the trash fee comes down, it's probably cheaper to separate it out. You know, when they start looking at numbers, it may not be a big number, but it's a number, and they're
Yeah.
doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Any other questions? No? So I think that's, I'm glad you came
Yeah.
in, thank you.
Thank you very
And,
much.
Continue to, you know, work with Christina,
It is a good.
Yep.
and, you know, we can certainly relay a message to her if it's necessary, but Colleen can do that for us, that the board is amenable to making sure that there's some sort of area for recycling on new projects, and some existing projects as well.
Perfect.
All right,
Perfect.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time.
Appreciate it.
You could adjourn now.
Almost.
Next item on the agenda is, 44 Westwood Street, vote required for Form J covenant.
They have
it's
the
all there?
addresses on the stickies.
Yeah, I know. Is there, did anybody from the town review them? Christina or?
Yeah, no, they've been submitted by the lawyers, and Evan's fine with them. They should have been with the plans that were signed.
Okay,
That's what it should have happened, so we sort of missed that, so we're backtracking on this.
okay,
It's a standard form.
great.
All right.
So I'll entertain a motion to vote to require.
So moved.
For the Form J
Second.
covenant for 44 Westwood Street. I got a motion by Mike, second by Glenn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next one is a vote required for Form J covenant for 135 Dalton Road. Entertain a motion that we go forward and sign the Form J covenant.
So moved.
Motion
Second?
by Mike, second by Glenn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 313 Littleton Road was continued to March 14th. Next item on the agenda is a town meeting warrant article for spring 2018. It's a citizen's petition to amend the Article 24, Route 129 Business Amenity Overlay District, Section 195C1. I'm not going to read the description. The maker of the article sent a letter. She said, unfortunately, I'm too sick to attend planning board meeting tonight, and Brian Latina is unavailable. So we'd like the citizen petition regarding changes to BAOD to be continued to the next scheduled meeting. That's her request. It's our public hearing, so we can determine if we want to have any discussion on it, or wait till next meeting and have additional discussion, or have discussion tonight and continue the next meeting. It's up to the body of this board, so.
Well,
so,
I mean, it strikes me, I mean, I don't mind giving her another shot at
Okay.
talking about it. So if nobody else thinks otherwise, I'd move to continue the public hearing.
Second.
Well, it is a public hearing, I did open it, so before we do that, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on the article? Anyone in the audience?
I'll speak at
Crickets.
once.
There's no one in the audience that would like to speak on it, so what I would encourage the board, formulate your questions, so the next meeting we'll have those questions to ask the applicant, so.
Got it.
uh,
So moved?
Motion by Mike to continue, second by Glenn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Just a reminder that I think that we should, next meeting, we should
Close it down, yeah.
close it down and submit our letter, or come up with a letter at that meeting as well,
And just to,
because other boards are going to be reviewing it as well,
bingo, that was all I was gonna say, was other boards need time to consider it too.
so. Okay.
We have meeting minutes, so please.
So the next one is we have January 10th meeting minutes in front of us. Those were emailed out. Anyone have any additions, corrections? Want to take a minute to review them one more time?
Yeah, the last page, next to the last paragraph, I believe the term cleaning up is inappropriate, and what we actually discussed was clarifying the language.
Where are you?
This is in
The last page,
Oh, you're on the 24th minute.
I am,
minutes.
I'm on the last
Oh,
page
yeah,
of the
that's a
whole thing.
separate one that
Let's-
was
Okay,
not sent out by email.
So we're going to come back to that.
All right,
Okay? We're just doing the 10th right now.
okay. No comments.
Would you like a motion?
I see Monica still reading, so.
No, I moved on the 29th, so I'm ready for a motion on. I mean, sorry, the 24th.
Move that we accept the meeting minutes of January 10th, 2018 as written.
Second?
Motion by Mike, second by Glenn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Colleen was able to get the January 24th meeting minutes done. So those are in front of you as well. They're not on the agenda, but I think that we can look at them and take a vote, and then she can throw them on the agenda for next meeting to endorse our vote if we have to, but at least you can get these posted, and so we'll be fairly up to date. So is the
What did
second
you want
last
on the
paragraph,
cleaning up,
how you want
Leanne's?
to change it?
The second to the last
Clarify?
paragraph, where it says cleaning up should be clarified.
Thank you.
Clarify the language, okay?
Okay. Looks good to me.
Monica, you good?
I'm good. Just
Everyone else?
really tiny over here. That should be a period instead of comma.
Okay. Mike?
You looking at me? I move that,
Someone else.
I move that we accept the minutes of January 24th as amended.
I'll give a second.
I got a motion by Mike, second by Glenn. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next meeting is March 14th. We already had a discussion on 129B AOD and CIOD. Historic preservation, do we want to discuss that any further this evening, or?
I'll give a little bit of a report, but I don't know that we're ready to discuss it.
Okay.
Since
Just
I
so
don't have handouts tonight, and I'm not sure that it's worth trying to discuss without handouts.
Okay,
And just so you know, Evan requested that I leave them on the agenda for when it's appropriate, but we can talk about it at any time when you're ready.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. So I did attend the Historical Commission meeting. They did have some recommendations in terms of language on clarifying what constitutes historically significant, the various forms of covenants that would be put in place, and some other recommendations. I went through and did an edit based on their recommendations and the suggestions that were offered by this board at the previous meeting. And those were handed out, I believe, at our last meeting. I think 2 weeks ago they were handed out. So, Colleen, were they also distributed by email?
The ones you sent me, not by me.
The last ones I sent you. I might have sent them to Evan.
I think they went to Evan, and I just don't know if he did distribute them.
Okay. Then Monica sent me did some research and sent me some links to historical preservation bylaws in some of our surrounding towns. There are a few things in there that look like they would be worth incorporating into our preservation bylaw. One in particular, Ed, was forbidding exterior staircases, which made a lot of sense to me. There was also some good language in some of them in terms of scoping why they would do it, what the purposes were. So I'd like to roll some of those bits in and then recirculate the draft.
okay.
Okay.
Now, I know we don't have handouts, but I also was kind of perusing a little earlier today, and I saw that, say, the town of Situate, in their bylaw, that applied to certain structures that were already on a predetermined list of historically significant structures. So I don't know if there was any thought into inventorying what is considered historically significant, and then if those came up for redevelopment, then those would be the ones targeted.
We
for this
actually
bylaw.
already do have a inventory of what is considered historically significant, and that inventory is then passed on to the state and is incorporated into the state's list. So if it's on the state's list of historically significant, it's already included. If it's on the National Register, it's included within this definition, within the draft. And if it's not on either one of them, so there's the town list that gets passed on to the state, so it's almost the same, but may not have caught up. Okay, So that's included, the state's list is included, the Federal Register is included, and if none of those are currently address the property, the ability to go to the Historical Commission and have it evaluated for historical significance is an option. Having it evaluated does not automatically mean that they will find it historically significant. There are many, many properties that go before them for evaluation with requests for with demolition requests that are not found to be historically significant. And they then permit the demolition permits. So there's a fraction of what they look at that are considered historically significant.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, yeah. One of the things we had talked about at Historical Commission was the potential to develop some sort of a coverage for commercial, industrial, other structures than residential properties. And while nobody at the table had any really good, really striking ideas, one of the things that we came up with was to incorporate it in the COID under the considerations list. Simply as it could be one other thing that we would take into consideration.
You're talking like the mills, something like that up in north?
Well, that would be a really good example.
That would be a
How
good
you'd use it.
example, yeah. I mean, the thing is that when you get past residential, it can be anything. It's not necessarily just a building. So it could be a development plan for a property that has a historic bridge on it. And if we were to incorporate historic preservation of historically significant structures into the considerations list under COID, it would give us some leverage to negotiate. And that's about all we could come up with in terms of non-residential, because it's, the COID has so many leniencies in it already that stacking anything else on top, incentives on top, gets to be too dense.
Well, if you want to think about an example of the sort of property that might get involved here in a non-residential, just think of the Oddfellows home in
Yeah.
the center of town.
Yeah,
I mean, where having something in there might,
Yeah, well, I
yeah.
think that falls under village, and
it falls under village as well, but,
so, but no, that's
Yeah.
a prime example, yeah.
yeah, that's a good example.
So,
Very good.
All right.
Committee reports?
Well, I've been hanging around with the EDC and these guys down here. A lot of good progress being made on branding and coming up with a logo to introduce the 129 area. That's looking good, and I don't know how many of you have met the new, what's her office, Lisa's office? Huh?
Business development.
Business development, yeah. If you haven't met her, you should go meet her. She shows up to all the EDC meetings and always has good stuff to say.
Okay.
That's what I've been up to.
Anyone else?
CPC meeting, we had one last week. Playgrounds, renewal of playgrounds seems to be soaking up a lot of the available money. So we went forward for town meeting with $75,000 for the biome. So that's starting to, that seems to be a continuing theme at CPC. That's about all that's new with CPC.
All right. At NEMCOG, we had an interesting speaker come in. I forget her name now, but she's from the state and the housing. And she brought up or came in about housing choice initiative. And the governor has set a goal of 135,000 new housing units statewide by 2025, or about 17,000 units per year. And I said, wow, that's quite a bit. And basically, they showed some charts and graphs and things about where rents are and where prices are. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the rents are probably some of the highest in the nation. The housing prices are up there. And he feels that by creating new housing, you have to create housing for people that are in the workforce, so you can attract businesses and companies into the state. So they've come up with a couple of things. One is there's some legislation that's being proposed, and it's an act to promote housing choices. And one of the things that the act will do is to reduce the required vote from 2/3 supermajority to a simple majority for certain zoning changes in relation to housing. So I thought that was quite interesting. It's basically promote best practices, so it's, I thought that was quite interesting. Also, part of this is that they've put in for, and it hasn't been approved yet, but some grant money, capital grant money. I brought it to Evan's attention, and he's investigating it, looking into it. That if you meet certain thresholds and certain levels, there may be some capital grant money available to do sidewalks and bike paths, or upgrade some roads and intersections, that type of thing. So I brought that to his attention as well. And matter of fact, Manager Cohen was at the presentation as well, so he took notes. But I think I sent this off to you, Colleen,
I never saw it.
the housing choice.
Yeah, no.
All right, I'll send it to you, and so you send it out to
Send it
the
around.
board members. But thought it was an interesting presentation. I mean, it's, matter of fact, one of the examples that was in the presentation was a project that we just approved in town, based through our 129 overlay and CEIOD, and that was an example. And throughout the Commonwealth, throughout the area, there's a lot of towns that are promoting housing and different types of housing. So I thought it was quite interesting. It was more interesting than I thought it would be. So,
That's
Yeah,
a good thing.
that sounds it.
Hallelujah.
so that's all I have for NEMCOG.
Okay. I'd like to
George.
put in a plug for the citizen planner stuff coming up in 2 weekends, 2 weeks from Saturday. I'm already signed up. I've got the pot course, the parking one, and I can't remember what the third one is. That's what I'm doing.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
But it's only like $75 and the town picks it up, so I would recommend anybody who's so inclined. And my recollection is that
You
the
don't sit
the
there and
munchies are
smoke
good.
pot. They talk
They-
about
they
zoning
talk about
issues.
zoning.
Let's clarify that for the public.
No samples.
No samples.
Well, I don't know, maybe this year.
Yeah, it is legal.
I went last year, Nancy and Mike went last year too, and I think
Yeah.
we took away some
good
good
stuff.
material, so.
It was good
And,
training.
and a nice part of it is the conversation. You're sitting at a table with people from, some town in central Massachusetts that's got 400 people, and they have a whole different set of problems, but they're interesting problems.
Yeah, I mean, I took it when I first got on the board too, and
Yeah.
I think I took
a lot of
roles and
fun.
responsibilities of a planning board
Yeah.
member.
That's a
which
good
was
one to
great
take,
one.
That's good.
Site plan review, a few other courses, so, but I have no desire to take it at this point.
Well, you've probably had them all, except the pot course.
No, I didn't. But I did read the legislation, so that was
Yeah,
interesting.
well, reading that legislation is, an activity in itself.
Nan, you have one more comment?
I had a couple comments. I do
let's-
recommend taking the rules and regulations of planning boards and zoning boards for anybody that's new to the board. Strongly recommend it. It's really good training, and it's a good basis to understand what you're getting yourself into. The other thing was I was in a conversation with my assigned mentor yesterday, talking about zoning and changes in zoning to promote commercial utilizations and such. And I got to wondering about how we compare in terms of our percent utilization of commercial, industrial, residential, multifamily, with the other towns around. And I was wondering if NEMCOG has any comparative statistics on things like that.
I'd have to check. They probably have some.
Could you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're talking like Chelmsford's 2080 or something like that?
Yeah, just basically, I mean, how do we compare for utilizations, and how does it affect the tax rates compared with other towns?
Oh, let's not get into tax rates for this board.
Well,
That's not this
all
board.
right.
Well, let another
But I'd
board
still
get
like,
that
I would
Open
still
that
like
can
to.
of worms,
All right.
trust me.
I would still like to know the utilizations and how we compare with surrounding towns.
Okay.
I think it would be useful to understand.
It's useful to understand, in 13 years, this board has never taken a stance on taxes.
And I
I
don't think we ever
understand.
should.
and
And nor
never
should
done
we.
a project on taxes.
Nor should we.
That's right. So let's stay out of that battle.
Yeah, nor
That's
should
for
we.
the selectmen.
Yeah, that-
That's for them to deal with.
They get paid a lot more than us.
Exactly. All right.
So there's nothing else on the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion.
I so move.
And I'll
Motion by
second.
Mike to adjourn, second by Jen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for attending this evening.
Aye, aye, aye.